Okay, good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to I'm ready to convene the meeting of the TMC RMC and welcome everybody. Pat, would you call roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. City of Avondale, Matt Dudley.
Present.
City of Buckeye, Dan Cotterman. I see him on the WebEx. City of Chandler, Ryan Peters.
Present.
City of El Mirage, Amber Wakeman. Town of Fountain Hills, Dave Trimble.
Here.
Town of Gilbert, Mary Goodman.
Here.
City of Glendale, Kevin Phelps.
Here.
City of Goodyear, Winnette Reed.
Present.
Maricopa County, Sean Pierce. City of Mesa, Chris Brady.
Here.
City of Peoria, Kevin Burke. City of Phoenix, Mario Paniagua.
Here.
Town of Queen Creek, Heather Wilkie.
Present.
City of Scottsdale, Mark Milanchenko.
Here.
City of Surprise, Tracy Montgomery.
Tracy Montgomery here.
City of Tempe, Rosa Inchausti. Present. City of Tullison, Reyes Medrano. Chair, we're ready to proceed.
Thank you, Pat. If a committee member would like to ask a question or make a comment during the meeting, please type your comment in the box and it will be read aloud and answered. All meeting attendees, please mute your computer microphone or phone. Next up is the public comment. The public will be provided with an opportunity at this time to address the committees on non-agenda items and all action agenda items for the joint RPTA and VMR meeting agendas. Up to 3 minutes will be provided per speaker unless the chair allows more at their discretion. A total of 15 minutes for all speakers will be provided. Do we have any public comment cards?
Yes, ma'am. Blue Valley is here today.
All right, thank you.
Reiterate my comments from meeting referring to the consent agenda and also when it's specific to an agenda item on the other entities that it is related in that one. And I'll start with the Valley Metro transportation agenda. I agree that you guys should do that, go on from there, but I don't see it being as proactive as it should. Was any of it recorded?
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Okay, as I said, did you happen to get the first part of it? Will you be putting what I'm now going to do on the RPTA agenda, which is the proposed service changes? In the document from '06, one of the roads that you're supposed to have dealt with is Litchfield. I don't see that in there. I also don't see where you're addressing the congestion, the volume, et cetera, of the roadways when on Highway 60, which runs through what? Surprise, El Mirage, Sun City West, Glendale, Peoria, Phoenix. There was mile-long backups. It's congestion every day. When is that route going to be addressed? When you, as with last month, one of the things in there was the maintenance. $10 million contract, of which 700,000 was going to be used for bus. Why was it mixed? And why was it listed the bus facility as the top thing? When obviously the bifurcation of the agencies is something that I have been pushing for, being that your funding, et cetera. But I am tired of the rail leaching everything from the bus and doing it. I requested information on the park and ride up at Metro Center. I got a letter saying it was funded by the City of Phoenix, the feds, and Valley Metro. I didn't see Valley Metro Rail there. Just a thought, how many of your stops don't have a bus stop or bus shelter? Well, you spent $40 million on a park and ride. How much for each one of those individual spaces? You need to take care of my bus ridership. There is summer coming, and that shade that's provided by that shelter is important.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, up next is the Chief Executive Officer's report, Ms. Medford Miller.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committees. I've got just a few updates for you this morning. First, I want to provide good news on the recent notification of congressionally directed funding awards to Valley Metro RPTA. With the support of Senator Sinema, Kelly, and Congressman Stanton, we were notified last month that RPTA will receive a $1.3 million congressionally directed funding award for the purchase of accessible microtransit vehicles and related infrastructure. We know that microtransit currently fills an important need within our service area, especially in communities that don't have fixed route bus or rail service, or don't have a great density of those services, and especially in communities where we have a density of older adults and individuals with disabilities. These vehicles will assist us in providing connections to the regional transit network, allowing for greater access to services and to help support Maricopa County's goals for emissions reduction. In addition, piloting these new technologies, these will be zero emissions vehicles, will provide us with important information on battery performance and range. These will be light duty vehicles. These are not large transit buses, by the way. This is going to allow our maintenance team to have new experience with zero emissions light duty vehicles as we define their potential role in the future of Valley Metro's fleet. We also received an additional $500,000 in congressionally directed funding that will fund the zero emissions bus program. I want to provide an update on South Central. We are moving forward full speed ahead. We are now over 80% complete on South Central Extension. All of our downtown track work is complete. This is third in Washington, and this was completed earlier in the month of March. This is a bird's eye view. So we're looking south here from the Interstate 17 corridor, and you can see Salt River in the background, and track work at last has begun on the Salt River Bridge. All of the new stations are also under construction at this time. And at long last, our new ticket vending machines have arrived. Our goal in working on this regional project led by City of Phoenix was to begin replacing these ticket vending machines this spring and summer at light rail stations. And indeed, these ticket vending machines have undergone factory acceptance testing, and we're working now to begin the installation process. The infrastructure at the stations to receive these ticket vending machines is already in the process of being installed. It is a big weekend for the Valley as we once again host a mega event. We are delighted to be the host city for the Final Four. We have a very robust operations, security, and customer experience program planned for November 5th through 8th. This is really an all hands on deck experience for Valley Metro team members. Not only our operations teams, but volunteers from across the agency will be out assisting our customers. This is especially exciting. This is our first Final Four event being sponsored by City of Phoenix, in which we're able to offer a Final Four pass that's available via the Valley Metro mobile app, and it's good for April 5th through 8th for folks who are heading to Final Four festivities. So very exciting for us. Looking ahead at our calendar, we're here tomorrow for Audit Finance Subcommittee. The full board convenes on April the 18th. We're back in this room for TMC RMC on May 1st. One additional date I want to note is the April 20th, Saturday, April 20th, Fiesta on Central. We hosted a Fiesta on Central celebration of the community along the South Central corridor back in the fall, and we're hosting it again this spring. You've received information. We'll be sure to get email details out from that. That will be a daytime event on Saturday, April 20th. That concludes my report. Madam Chair, are there any questions I may answer?
Well, thank you very much. Any questions? Any questions from those online? I am not seeing any, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. It's presented for action. Are there any committee members that have questions or would like to pull an item for separate discussion? I am not seeing any, so could I get a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda items 3A through 3C, please?
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm not seeing any, so the motion passes. So we're on item 4, Fair Collection System Modernization Community Outreach Plan. Ms. Medford Miller, please introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item was requested by a member of the board. This item is being presented for information only. As you're aware, the Fair Collection Modernization System will change how our customers interact with fair payment across Valley Metro. And as such, we have a robust program for engaging and informing our customers. Here to give a presentation is Hillary Foos, our Director of Communications and Strategic Initiatives.
Hi, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thanks for your time. As Jessica mentioned, we are continuing to embark on a major investment in our fare system modernization. It's been a great partnership with the City of Phoenix in our region. We're working on this, some of us for, let's not count them, probably 6 years or more. But obviously these investments take, as they should, quite a bit of time to make sure they're the right investments. But the rubber's meeting the road here this spring into this summer to make the change from moving from paper magnetic stripe fare media to mobile fare and a reloadable smart card. In front of you is the timeline where that rubber is meeting the road, where the customers will make that transition. And as such, we have a very robust outreach plan that I'll be going over with you today and welcome your feedback. As you know, we introduced mobile fare last year, right before hosting Super Bowl, and that program will continue to evolve. But actually last month, we introduced the ability to apply for a reduced fare account online. I'll be going over that a little bit more in this presentation. So that application and its online availability is active now. As Jessica showed you in an image, we're excited to have new fare vending machine equipment in this region. And so that's actually, that installation is happening as we speak with the first pass where a machine is being installed at all stations across the system now. And then we'll come back in as we'll show here on the timeline in a couple months to do that second pass. Specialty passes, those are special pass programs with institutions. So ASU has the U Pass, a lot of employers have the Platinum Pass. All those cards have to be transitioned as part of this program rollout. And so we're working with all those employers and institutions to engage them on this transition. The retail network, you may know we have hundreds of convenience stores, grocery stores that are part of our current program to be able to sell fare media to customers. That retail network will be going through a complete transition. Still hundreds of outlets being available, but certainly that program will be changing and we'll be communicating that to customers as well. The website currently available for reduced fare will transition to a public website here later this month and early into May, where people will be able to use that website to load value, which is a big transition for customers, to load value onto their mobile account or to the reloadable smart card. And as they tap their fare instrument, it'll be debited every trip they take. And so that public website will be available later this spring as well. In May, most of the products will be available, whether that's a mobile account or that reloadable smart card, and we'll be pushing out Smart Fare. You may remember us talking about Smart Fare. It's been instituted in our fare policy. Essentially, Smart Fare is, in the technical term, it's fare capping. The more you spend, the more you save, with daily, weekly, and monthly maximums on the system. And then in June, we'll have all elements being available, and fare box installation will begin on the buses as well. And that'll happen across the next couple months. Really in late July and beginning of August, that mag stripe fare media that people have been using will start to be eliminated and no longer accepted as that fare box transition takes place. And that second pass of those fare vending machines, again, that first pass is happening now. That second pass will happen in July. And then again, that fare box installation will continue through most of the summer. Just to remind you, just because it's very related and also an active discussion with our board and on behalf of my colleague Ken Kessler, there is a fare policy study that is active. And if you recall, our board, we had a very extensive board study session on the idea of where does our fare policy go as we leverage these new investments in technology and in this account-based system. And so that fare policy study is very active. It's ongoing. And so as you can see there's been several stages completed, including an extensive peer review with our peers across the country, as well as looking at some guiding principles based on that board discussion. You can see next steps. They're evaluating various options, again, here to leverage that account-based system and to increase ridership and also to increase equity across the system, making it more accessible. And we plan to, with Ken and his team, to bring back those recommendations for discussion to this body and to the board in late summer, early fall. So outreach, jumping back to outreach. Certainly with all those changes I just mentioned, outreach needs to be extensive and expansive across our very diverse ridership. We certainly want to bring awareness, certainly to the changes, communicate the benefits of these changes, but also make it easy to take part in the transition. We want to communicate the deadlines and certainly ease any concerns and confusion across the process. That means we need to get out there and communicate directly with our customers and be where they are. I'm going to show you just a couple things that have been active since last fall. Certainly our frontline team, our operators, our maintenance team, customer service, our customer experience coordinators, those folks who are out in the field who will naturally engage with a lot of our riders need to be educated. Certainly they'll be our front line of defense in terms of fielding those customer questions. And we've been active with our frontline team since the fall. We've had more than 2,300 engagements, more than 30 visits to all of our operating facilities and garages to make sure that they feel informed, to have the information, and certainly be prepared to answer those questions. Some of the other efforts underway with our ridership, we have these decals you see there. The orange decal is available on the buses. We have announcements beginning on the system. We also starting some social and digital promotions to very targeted audiences. We're also starting to build up email distribution lists. And through all of our existing outreach, we're starting to communicate to be prepared for these changes and to become engaged. We're also doing a lot of event planning, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Certainly, we want to be strategically out in the community to communicate these changes. And as mentioned, relative to the specialty passes, we're also doing a lot of work with the organizations and employers who are engaged in one or more of these programs to take part in the transition. So certainly we need to get out to a lot of riders. As you know, we have tens of thousands of them every day. So our efforts will be very broad brush to reach all of our riders, but certainly we're very focused on some of those listed there, some of our harder to reach communities, certainly our Spanish language riders, some of those who will take part and now need to have a reduced fare account to take part in reduced fare. Traditionally, you've been able to present your own ID, whether that's your driver's license or your student ID. Now all those folks who want to take part in reduced fare who are eligible need to have a reduced fare account. So there's a lot of education we need to do with some of our reduced fare customers. So those are very important audiences for us to connect with. On the right there, you'll see some of the tactics that we are considering, and certainly as highlighted there, we will be working across the region and in a bilingual way to make sure that we're connecting through fair town halls, pop-up events, community outreach events, targeted media buys, earned media, and a lot of different education efforts. And eventually we'll be actually distributing cards. In the future, riders will need to make a choice whether they'll be using mobile or our reloadable copper card. And if it's the reloadable copper card, we'll be doing that card distribution in the beginning in May timeframe. Certainly across all of that, rider outreach will be introducing the reduced fare concept, but certainly we need to make sure that we're communicating specifically to reduced fare audiences as well. So again, we'll be really concentrating on those folks that currently have reduced fare IDs. We have a database of those. We'll also be working with our senior centers and disability groups and youth groups to make sure we're approaching them and educating them on the upcoming process. We also, as I mentioned, we have a website today, valleymetrofairs.org, where you can currently apply online for that reduced fare. Eventually, that'll become the public website, as I mentioned earlier. We're also working with all of your cities, and we appreciate the support to set up some regional office hour locations where people can go and get that in-person assistance. Here's just some of the material that you will start to see and your cities are starting to see, and we really appreciate, again, the city support to push it out through all of the city channels as well. Certainly your constituents and your residents are critical to hearing and seeing this information. So this is just some of the branding for reduced fare. This is the website I mentioned. It's very easy to use. Certainly not everyone might be comfortable using the website. That's why we know we need to get out in person. But this is what it looks like. It's a very simple, easy to use website to register as a reduced fare account user. And here are some of the general education pieces as well. And I'll highlight for you that valleymetro.org/fare technology is where we're keeping all of the information up to date. It's a great resource for you and your residents, great FAQ, great materials, great handouts. So certainly for any project updates, I recommend that site as well. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. I see one here. Chris, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I think you highlighted a lot of things that are concerning. So obviously, many of those who rely upon this service and who are eligible for that reduced fare just aren't very mobile, right?
Right.
It's hard for them to even, get out. So I do appreciate the idea that you're trying to get closer to those individuals. So please let us help you as cities and being able to identify locations where we can make that easier for you to make these services available. Because I think nobody likes change, right? Especially someone's used to certain routines and how things are happening. So yeah, let us help you make that transition really easy and getting out into those areas. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Grady. And your cities have already been very helpful. We've identified libraries in your city in particular, events in Mesa as well, and we will continue to keep that connection close.
All right, Mario.
Thank you, Hillary, for the update, and I 100% agree with Chris's comments. One question as it relates to reduced fare for persons with disabilities. My understanding is there's a different process for folks in terms of getting their reduced fare renewed, or if they've got a disability, they've got to actually come in and do something. Can you explain what we're doing to fix that?
So I believe, so there is, so just to clarify, so what I'm speaking to is relative to the reduced fare account registration process. There is also a process active right now relative to the ADA Platinum Pass. ADA Platinum Pass is a program that for ADA eligible persons who want to use fixed route and can use fixed route, a Platinum Pass can be provided. And you're familiar with the Platinum Passing concept where it allows people to use a bus and rail. And in this case, the Platinum Pass is complimentary. It's subsidized by the region. There is an in-person process established for those customers to exchange their current ADA Platinum Passes for, again, all those cards need to be transitioned to new cards in the new system. And there is communication out to those. There's a few thousand customers that currently have ADA Platinum Passes, and they are going through an in-person exchange process at the Mobility Center. We understand there are concerns about having customers from across the region come into the Mobility Center. It is important that that exchange does happen in person, as I know there have been and are concerns about people who have that card, those persons using that card to make sure that they're being used by the person who owns that card. There has been some concerns about past fraud. So that in-person process has been important to our accessible transit group and to the region in the past. However, we are working through a process to make sure that obviously they can use fixed route at no cost with their ADA Platinum Pass today, and also working through, actually just met this morning to work through how can we make accommodations relative to paratransit for those customers that may not be able to take fixed route to the Mobility Center. How can we make that also complimentary as well? And so we're working through that process as well.
Thank you for clarifying the terminology for me. So I just want to clarify too. So if you've got an existing ADA Platinum Pass even if it's ongoing and not scheduled to expire anytime soon, they would also have to come in and get in person to get that assessment redone.
It's not an assessment, Mr. Paniagua, so all the cards that we have in the system today, so we all have, like as an employer card, we all have cards today. All those cards will eventually be swapped out to take part in the new system. And so same thing exists for ADA Platinum. There are a few thousand current ADA Platinum card users that are actively using their ADA Platinum passes, and they need to come in and to exchange to get a new card that'll work on the new system. And so there has been a process instituted where that exchange is happening in person at the Mobility Center.
But is that different from reduced fare for youth or seniors?
It is.
And they don't need to come in.
Right. So that's the youth and the seniors is what I described, that we will go out into the community, work with parents and schools and seniors and Ability 360 to make sure that all of those folks who need to use reduced fare moving forward into the future have that reduced fare account and set it up through the online website, and then have that online account, whether that's mobile or their copper card, so they can qualify and use reduced fare moving forward.
Just seems like an inequitable requirement for persons with disabilities to have to come in person when you don't necessarily require that for everyone. So thank you.
Sure thing.
If I may, Madam Chair, Mr. Paniagua, this item is an addition or a little bit separate from the ADA paratransit evaluation process by which an individual is evaluated for their ability to access the fixed route system and their eligibility or potential eligibility for paratransit service. And we were challenged by the board to come up with solutions to make that process itself more accessible. A brief update was provided to the board at the March 22nd meeting. We're continuing to work on options, and we'll provide another update at the April 18th meeting. We'll be sure to share that with this committee. But what we have heard from these committees and our board and our customers is an appetite to make those assessment processes more accessible, especially geographically accessible, given the expanse of our service area. So we hear you. We will fold in to that update in pursuit the exchange of the Platinum Card process. So look for those updates coming later this month.
Okay, thank you. Kevin Burke, your hand was up and it's down. I'm just going to check with you to see if you got your question answered.
I did, thank you.
All right, thank you. So any other questions? I'm not seeing any. Thank you for the presentation. No action is required on this item. So next item is travel and expenditures. Nothing there. We'll move on to report on current events and suggested future agenda items. Does any members have any updates, ideas for future agenda items? Not seeing any. All right, the next meeting of the TMC RMC is scheduled for Wednesday, May 1st, 2024 at 11 a.m. With that, we conclude the TMC and RMC meeting and move on to Transit Management Committee. And we'll convene this meeting and welcome everybody. And the first item is minutes from the March 6, 2024 meeting are presented for approval. I need a motion and a second to approve the TMC meeting minutes from March 6, 2024.
By motion?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? All right, it passes. So item number 2, paratransit eligibility assessment and travel training services contract award. Ms. Medford Miller, please introduce.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committees. This item is being presented for action this morning. We were just a moment ago speaking about the paratransit eligibility process. This item requests contract authority for the award of a contract to MTM Transit LLC for paratransit evaluation and travel training. So paratransit eligibility evaluation is the process by which an individual is assessed to determine his or her ability to access the fixed route system, so bus, rail, streetcar, And then travel training is a program that provides one-on-one training that's specific to a person, their travel origins and destinations, and their physical abilities that helps them access fixed route transit. So two different programs, both have historically been provided to Valley Metro customers via a contractor. I want to invite Tom Young, our Deputy Chief for Bus and Paratransit Operations, to the podium to provide a brief presentation on this item and answer any questions you may have. Mr. Young.
Thank you, Jessica. Madam Chair, members of the committee. As Jessica said, this award is for the ADA eligibility assessments, which is a requirement of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it came with actual federal guidelines to follow. And also, we have a travel training program that teaches individuals to use the regular bus and/or light rail system. The contract in front of you right now has a 5-year base term with 5 additional 1-year extensions available. So the 5-year base term actually is at a cost of $8,343,420. We do have an updated memo that breaks this out when it comes to the board. One of the things I want to highlight on the cost right now, we are recommending to award to the same firm that currently does the eligibility and travel training. The year 1 costs in analysis, it does include approximately a 16% increase from current rates. There's 2 areas I want to talk about on that increase. The first area is to better serve the customers for both travel training and for the eligibility process. They have proposed 2 additional staff persons. So the 2 additional staff persons makes up some of that increase. The second piece is they did do a wage adjustment for all of the staff. MTM Transit was one of our only contractors back at the end of the pandemic that did not reach out and want to increase their staff's wages at the time that all the other contractors did. So included in their bid was actually a wage adjustment also. One other important thing about this contract award is it is a cost plus contract. So if in fact the demand is not there for them to hire the additional evaluators or travel trainers at this point, we do not reimburse them for that extra staff. We only pay for the staff that they have on board. It is about a 95% personnel contract at this point. So we only pay for the staff they have on board in the time that the staff are here. I can answer any other questions on this award at this time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any hands from those online, so I think we are good. Thank you. So I'm sorry. That's all right. Thank you, Pat. It doesn't hurt to remind me. I'm requesting a motion and a second to forward to the Board of Directors authorization for the CEO to execute a contract change order with MTM Transit LLC for the services of paratransit eligibility assessment and travel training services in an amount not to exceed $18,075,687 through June 30th of 2034. Can I get a motion and a second?
Move approval of staff recommendation. Sorry.
I have a motion and a second. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm not hearing any, so the motion passes. The third item is proposed October 2024 service changes, and this is proposed for 2024 transit service changes and community outreach plan is presented for information only.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to invite Carol Ketcherside, our Director of Service Planning, to the podium to provide a brief update. We do develop biannual service changes in coordination with the Service Planning Working Group, which comprises staff from all of our member communities. And here we have identified 2 potential changes for your consideration. This item would then be approved by the board at our next opportunity. Carol.
Chair, members of the committee, Every 6 months, we are constantly looking at our service for changes that need to be made. Every 6 months, we put through a round of changes that rise to the level of requiring public comment, participation, and Title VI analysis. So this is an information item about what we are about to engage in for this public comment period. We will be doing other due diligence at the same time, such as the Title VI analysis. There are 2 service changes on this list. Route 77, extending Route 77 further west to 83rd Avenue, which will serve the Gila River Indian Community Service Center. And then the second one is Route 13 on Buckeye Road. And this is a City of Phoenix operated route to change that route to terminate at 24th Street SkyTrain Station instead of the Sky Harbor Terminal 2. So we will be, during the month of May, we will be taking public comment on these changes. And we will also be doing other analysis such as the Title VI that I mentioned. Once we have that kind of input and we review this with our member cities, we will be making recommendations on these, which will come back to you during the August cycle for approval. So this item is for information only at this time.
All right, are there any questions regarding this item? I am not seeing any. Thank you.
Thank you.
So item number 4, Valley Metro RPTA fiscal year 2025 preliminary operating and capital budget and 5-year operating forecast and capital plan. Ms. Medford-Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to invite Ken Kessler, Chief Financial Officer, to the podium to provide you with an overview of the FY25 capital and operating budgets. And here we are going to focus on the key assumptions and provide a review of some of our preliminary programs. So this is part of a stepped process in which we go into progressively more detail at each presentation. Mr. Kessler.
Thank you. Oops, hang on just a second, I grabbed the wrong notes.
I should mention that in addition to this committee, this information is being presented to the financial working group in collaboration with staff from each of our member communities and to the audit finance subcommittee as well.
Okay, got the right notes, got RPT. So thank you, Jessica, for that introduction to this item. Madam Chair, members of the committee, just want to go over the RPTA 25 preliminary budget. I do want to mention from the last time we looked at this, we gave kind of a highly level overview of the proposed budget. We have looked at some opportunities to sharpen our pencil a little bit and bring numbers down. So this budget does represent about a $2.6 million reduction from last month when you saw it. So I just wanted to point that out. It's also important to note that the budget is really built around the strategic plan. It's really the foundation of our budget is working towards implementing that strategic plan. And we'll get to a slide in a few minutes here to kind of highlight some of those items. Do also want to mention we're going into the kind of the detailed initiatives of the budget in this go round. We had this discussion with your member city staff. We had a RTAG financial working group sort of combined meeting last month. Got a lot of good feedback from your member city staff personnel, and so we've incorporated some of that into some of the budget materials here today. So just want to touch on the high level of the numbers, then we'll get into the details in a moment here. So the use of funds in our operating budget for FY25, again, about a 5% change from the current year. The preliminary main items here in this budget are the fixed route operations or demand service operations budget, as well as regional services. And do want to note and highlight the Vanpel operations increase there is really due to the capital portion of this program moving out of the capital budget into the operating budget with our new contract that was implemented in January of this year. Previously, we provided all the vehicles, so the cost of the vehicles were in our capital program. With the new contract, the contractor provides the vehicles going forward. So as our vehicles reach the end of useful life, we're transitioning out our vehicles and bringing on board the vendor's vehicles. So that cost of that contract is all captured in the operating budget. So that cost is really just kind of shifting from the capital to operating budget. And then on the operating sources of funds. So again, here, primarily our public transportation fund, funding operations, along with member city contributions, federal funds, and fair revenues. So now I just want to sort of highlight the way we build and present our budget. We've been doing this for, I think this is our third year now, and really helps provide a better understanding instead of providing like an accounting type line item budget, which can be very hard to discern what's actually changing in the budget. So we start with our base budget, and from there, that's basically our current year budget carrying forward into next year. We look at items that may be one-time items in our current year budget that don't continue forward, efficiencies, areas maybe where we've had historical underruns, and we identify some base reductions there in that process. And then from there, we add in sort of those ongoing obligations, continuing commitments, things the board have approved in the past that continue forward into future years, inflation or market type of impacts, or those things that we don't have any control over, like contract rates that are built into multi-year contracts that escalate from year to year. And then from there, we add in what we think are worthy initiatives for the agency to carry out, and those we identify as Valley Metro recommended or new initiatives. And then totaling all those up, that comprises our total operating budget for the year. So I want to kind of show what that looks like visually here with the numbers. So you see we have the base budget this year. For this year, we're able to identify about $8.3 million in reductions to the base budget. Again, through some of those one-time items that don't continue forward into next year, some of those areas where we've had historical underruns, we're able to kind of sharpen our pencil and trim back there to keep the budget as low as we possibly can. And then from there, we added in those ongoing obligations, those things that are sort of we don't have a lot of control over going forward, and arrive at our total budget of $277.6 million for fiscal year 25. And then in the pie chart, there's really just showing sort of the total increase, you know, the proportion amount that are those ongoing obligations versus some of those new initiatives that we recommend to staff. Now I want to touch on the strategic plan. So as you know, approved by the board back in January, delivering excellent customer experience is sort of the overarching goal of the strategic plan, with its underlying priorities and foundational elements, those goals and priorities that really support that overarching theme of delivering excellent customer experience. And our budget is going to be presented by a strategic plan goal, so we can make that sort of correlation between the budget and the strategic plan. So we will start with the recommended initiatives, and then we'll move on to the obligations, those continuing commitments, and inflationary items after we go through the agency recommended initiatives. So under the strategic plan goal of delivering excellent customer experience, a couple of items here. The customer digital tools enhancement, it's really adding features to our website and making improvements to the website to bring it in sync with the new mobile app, and also looking at adding multimodal trip payment capabilities within the mobile app as well. And then the enhanced passenger wayfinding and communications on the RPTA side is really focused on bus stop signage audit, looking at our bus stop. I think this kind of started with the Next Ride conversation about the bus stops across the region, how we're sort of inconsistent, and looking at, you know, are the ways to make the bus stop signage more relevant, more useful for our passengers. Now, stop there to see if there's any questions on that those items under that strat plan goal.
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, so moving on to the next strategic plan goal of deliver on stakeholder collaboration. This initiative, enhanced stakeholder collaboration, includes a data portal publication allowing member city staff to be able to access data directly. So this is additional Tableau licensing to allow for those additional individuals to be able to access that data. And then it also includes a SMS text outreach tool that's really geared towards reaching those who are not really engaged with our current communication channels, such as our social media or our app notifications. The next strategic plan goal, invest in our talent. In here, we're proposing a market adjustment and merit award. This would comprise a 2.5% cost of living adjustment and an up to 5% merit increase. And really the way we have this budgeted is about a 3.5% average increase on the merit award, recognizing that some folks will get, less, some folks will get more. And really the focus here, we've got the class and comp study coming up, but we wanted to make sure until those results are available and are implemented probably in about a year or so, we wanted to make sure we remain competitive and able to attract and retain talent. We currently have about a 14% or so vacancy rate, and we want to try to bring that down and make sure that we're able to keep our high performers and attract new talent as we have vacancies. Our next strategic plan goal, leverage data and technology. A few items here. Automated passenger counter validation. It's really to certify the APCs we have today for ridership reporting, especially to be able to use it for NTD. So FTA has certain requirements you have to meet if you want to use your APCs for ridership reporting to NTD. And there's a process we need to go through to validate and certify the APCs. And this is being done as well with RPTA, and the city of Phoenix is also looking to do the same thing so that we can be consistent across the region in how we capture and report ridership. And then the initiative to improve enterprise asset management system utility. This is really to increase operational reliability and the efficiency of our assets, keeping them up to a state of good repair and making sure, maintenance and ongoing efforts to keep these things running as efficiently possible continues going forward. And then the last item, replace end of life IT hardware. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We've got some IT equipment that's reaching end of useful life. We need to replace that in order to maintain those systems' reliability. Now under operational excellence, we're recommending an automated fuel management system implementation. This will allow us to automate a current process, which is manual, for tracking fueling, coolant, diesel exhaust fluid, and mileage for our bus fleet. This will make it more efficient, providing us more accurate and timely data on our vehicles so that we can react if there's items that are occurring where there's higher than normal consumption of these items. Would point out a possible repair needed or something like that, and we'll be able to react to that and correct it more quickly. And then the strategic plan goal of prioritize security on transit, cybersecurity risk reduction item here. This is really a cybersecurity IT tool refresh for endpoint detection and response, and then also enhancing our email security. And then on the operational technology cybersecurity side, it would allow us to update our existing OT workstation and server environments to make those systems more safe. So I'll pause there. That's all the Valley Metro recommended items before we go into obligations and see if there's any questions on those items.
I am not seeing
Sure.
any. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Chris.
Thank you. The last one on cybersecurity. I would just say, I don't know if that's the right amount. It seems really low for an agency this big. Have you all done a cybersecurity audit? Have you done those exercises to see what it would like if someone was trying to get in?
We did. So we have recently undertaken a cybersecurity IT audit as well as a cybersecurity OT or operations technology audit. We did have a larger expenditure in the budget last year for cybersecurity as well as the year prior.
Okay.
We have kind of skinny down this initiative request from the original budget submittal because of those recent investments, and then the investment as well in OT last year so that we can be responsive to each of those audits.
All right, just by itself, that's all I was looking at. It didn't seem very sufficient. On invest in our talent, I think this is really important. But I think I just have a question because you mentioned something I think that was important. You mentioned a couple of things. One, so right now, the way the plan is, there's a 2.5% COLA, and I'm assuming that applies to all employees across the board. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Then you mentioned you have a 14% vacancy rate today.
That's correct.
What is that? I mean, has that over the last year or two, what does that look like? Is
The
it mid
vacant-
14%? Is it more or less? What is that? Is there a trend there?
Sure. The vacancy rate has diminished in the last 2 years. Like many of our organizations, we really hit a high of our vacancy rate coming out of the pandemic, but we still are struggling with vacancies, especially in our technical disciplines. So think engineering, IT, and other skilled trades. I want to remind us that because we deliver our service through contractors, here we're talking about our PTA
Right.
employees.
No, thank you. I just think that's still way too high. So obviously, we have a tendency to try, how do we address vacancies like that? And we try to look at as you mentioned, your class and comp study. What is the timing of that, the conclusion of that? When is you anticipate having that study available for you all?
So I believe Penny, and I'm looking at Penny Lynch, our Director of HR, and Penny, if you don't mind approaching the table, that would be helpful. I believe our class and comp study recommendations are due toward the end of this calendar year. Is that accurate?
That's correct, Jessica. We are expecting to bring back recommendations to the board in January of 2025.
Okay, so help me with the timing on the budget of setting aside or identifying dollars. You called it merit. I'm going to call it market adjustment, or are they two different things? So you mentioned the merit, the 5%, and is that intended to try to address the vacancy rate? Is it going to be in response specifically to the class and comp studies? Help me with that.
I'd be happy to take that one, Kim. So it's not intended this year for FY25, which of course begins July 1 of 2024 and runs through June of 2025, is really intended to help us keep pace with current market. If we were to not award a merit increase this year, I would expect that the class and comp study recommendations would come back with a larger number. We're preparing ourselves to be responsive to the class and comp study recommendations in the FY26 budget year. So FY25, this current budget that we're exploring now, we are trying to keep pace and reduce that vacancy rate and try and reduce really the impact or the magnitude of the impact on the class and comp study recommendations.
So, but it was mentioned that something about an average. I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to allocate if the plan is to set aside whatever. So you mentioned a 5%, but how do you decide where that's being applied in order to address the vacancy?
So the merit increase will actually be applied based on performance for the FY24 fiscal year. So we conduct merit evaluations every single year of employee performance toward the end of the fiscal year. So we'll be gearing up to do that very soon. And then the merit increase amounts will vary between 0% and 5%, dependent upon the performance of a specific individual. So the merit increases themselves aren't intended to address structural issues. For instance, assignment of pay band by position. That's what the class and comp study is intended to address.
Okay. I think there's a lot of ways cities kind of talk about step pay, merit pay, cost of living, and we all kind of confuse them together. And then we do market adjustments during a year and try to be competitive. You're going to get probably caught up a little bit in that, how the cities, how they're used to doing things and the percentages that you're putting here. If I were you, I would try to tie this vacancy rate to this dollar amount you're setting aside going forward. And I would say it's a market across all your positions. So of all your positions, and I get it, you want to reward performance, but at the same time, you really, right now, it's both keeping your employees, but it's also, you got to fill those vacancies. And there's a balance there of how do you manage both of those, right? And so I don't know if this is the right split. I don't know if this is the way to present this, because I think some will say, hey, that sounds like more than a combination of COLA and step for other employees. But I would get this. I think there would have to be support, because every city sitting around this table is in a war of pay with public safety, right? And we always get offended when someone announces like they're going to be the highest paid one, and someone says, well, you're never going to be the highest paid one. I'm going to be the next highest paid one. And so it just escalates. So we all appreciate, obviously, to the extreme, the need to be competitive on a market side. So that will sell. I'll just say it that way, okay? So anything you can talk about as it relates to making sure, and performance is important, but with that 14% sitting in front of me, I would say you have to really drive hard as a priority. Maybe not wait, because you need to fill those vacancies now. It's like, how do you address your pay as a competitive position to fill those positions, right? I mean, I don't know if it's filling those positions is because why? Is it because we can't attract those positions because our pay is not competitive? It seems to me that's a priority, right? And I'm not trying to say merit pay isn't important. I think it is. But I guess if I were looking at this to go to a board who is sitting through budget discussions, at least mine are, hours and hours of departments coming forward, that would resonate because I get asked that question. What's your vacancy rate? What's going on? And you're right. I mean, we had much more different vacancy rates a year and a half ago than we are today. But part of that was we had to adjust wages in order to fill positions. So that's just quick input. And then, yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any. Please proceed.
Oh, you have a Mary wave.
Oh, there, I did not see Mary. I'm sorry. Thank you. Mary?
No problem. I just would say that I would echo all of Chris's comments. I thought that those were really great insights. So the only thing I would just add additionally, Jessica, is and staff, is if you could offer any insights on what, I understand the up to 5%, but the number that you actually put in the budget, what are you projecting as an average? Because to Chris's point, I think highlighting the vacancies and why there's a need to address some of these, as well as your planned class and comp study that's coming up, are all important, as well as I think it will be received differently to say 2.5% and up to 5, which sounds like it could total 7.5, which might vary significantly from some of the other cities in the valley that are going through that exact same process right now. So if you could offer anything to speak to what you anticipate that average to be, or how you've actually budgeted for that within that dollar that's shown on the screen, that would be helpful.
Yes, thank you for that comment. We budgeted at 3.5% for that, for the overall merit as an average. Looking back at prior history, at sort of the average of merits in recent years, about 3 to 3.5%.
That to me would be a helpful thing to share in that conversation, especially with the board.
Thank you for that.
All right. I don't think I've missed anybody else. So.
All right, so moving on to the obligations. So first, under deliver excellent customer experience, just one here, our bus system comprehensive operational analysis. This is just a continuation of an item that was approved last year for the current fiscal year. So the efforts for this analysis will continue into fiscal year 25, and that's what this item here represents. Under a strategic plan, the goal of leverage data and technology, this is IT contract rate annualization. So this is basically a number of IT contracts for maintenance and support and licensing and so on and so forth that have their multi-year contracts that have annual year-over-year rate increases. So this is to cover those. And then under strategic plan goal, operational excellence, some of the ongoing obligations we have here, a number of items listed here on the slide, highlighting fare collection system maintenance implementation as we move forward with the new fare system that Hillary talked about a short while ago. We'll have some O&M costs related to that, maintaining and operating that system going forward once we're into full operations. And as I mentioned earlier before, the new van pool contract, that's really moving those costs of the vehicles from the capital budget into the operating budget. And this really, in the next fiscal year, is a full year of that contract. Since that contract began in the middle of this fiscal year, next year will reflect a full year of that additional capital cost being reflected in the operating budget. And then the East Valley contract, again, similar situation there. That contract was implemented in the middle of the current fiscal year, so we'll see a full year impact of the cost of that new contract going forward into next year. And then looking at the strategic plan, goal of prioritize security on transit. Again, here, those annual contract rate increases for the Allied Universal contract. And just to clarify things, although that contract is primarily used mostly for VMR, there is an RPTA component of that because they do provide security at the Mesa facility. So that's why this item is here, and it's a fairly small amount.
Can I ask, do you mind if I interrupt you right here?
Are you good with that?
Is this okay?
Yeah.
I'm asking you.
Oh,
sorry.
Up to any time.
Sorry. I guess as I went through here, that this is the one area that I was wondering if we're missing an opportunity, because it seems like, as you mentioned, trying to tie everything to your strategic priorities plan. I remember there was quite a conversation about safety, right, on transit. And I know we've done some things, implemented things, but I'm wondering if we're missing the opportunity. As you know, it's kind of like, you know, one thing you learn as a city manager when you're doing a budget, the first thing you address is public safety, because everybody's going to love that, right? Because that's the priority. When we go out to the community and talk about budget, that's what everybody wants to know about, right? They'll talk about potholes and sidewalks later, but the first thing they want to know is it safe? I guess I don't know if I'm missing it in this presentation or it's embedded somewhere else, but it feels like the opportunity to enhance or move further along in addressing the idea of improving or making people feel safer on transit. I don't see it addressed in a very specific way, and maybe it's somewhere else. But if this is the same kind of presentation going to local officials, I would think they're used to 80, well, not maybe that much, 75% of their budget being in public safety. And I appreciate we focused on customer service, but there's nothing like customer service related to public safety. And I just don't know if there's just something that didn't make the cut here, or if I'm missing something. Can you shed a light on that for me?
I'd be happy to take that, Mr. Brady. So this is the RPTA budget. And so as Ken mentioned, this line item is tied to security at the Mesa Greenfield bus operations and maintenance.
Okay, so I'll see something.
You're going to see it when we go to the Valley Metro Rail budget.
That's where it's going to be. Okay.
Yeah, and the
thank you.
total cost, so we've got 7,000 here, but there's 2,100,000.
This is just specifically,
To-
okay,
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
bus and paratransit.
okay. All right, thank you. So I can't wait to see what I'm going to see.
So hold that thought.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on, this table here just provides a summary of all those obligations items in the budget, just looking at it across the various continuing commitments and the inflationary and market ridership impact items, totaling about 17.9 million increase from FY24 to FY25. Now, moving on to the capital budget, uses of funds in our capital budget. Primary item here is regional fleet, replacing our buses and keeping those up to date is one of the main items there. And also we have a number of regional facilities projects, as well as other regional projects like the fare collection project as it continues on into next fiscal year a bit as that project wraps up later this summer and fall. And on the sources of funds in our capital program, primarily funded by public transportation funds. And next year, it's those carry forward and reserves. Those are really fund balances for our public transportation fund. So be tapping into those next year along with federal funds to fund our capital program. And then we have a number of pass-throughs that RPTA does. Again, RPTA is the fiduciary for the public transportation funds. And so there are some uses passed through to VMR. We also have Arizona Lottery Fund disbursements that on behalf of the county, RPTA manages the Arizona Lottery Funds and disperse those to the member agencies. And then on the sources side, again, those lottery funds come to us and they support obviously the distribution. So that's a 1-for-1 correlation. And then on the VMR personnel reimbursements and capital funding allocation, again, those are the capital funds that go from RPTA to VMR for the capital program. And then the personnel reimbursements, again, a reminder that all staff of the agency are technically RPTA staff. So VMR reimburses RPTA for the cost of staff. And then did want to highlight our 5-year operating forecast, both, 5-year operating and capital forecast. First, looking at our 5-year operating sources and uses. On the sources side, again, about a $1.8 billion program for the next 5 years. Sources primarily coming from public transportation funds and member city contributions to fund the bulk of that program. And then on the uses side, again, fixed route operations and demand service operations are our main service programs as the primary uses of the funds. And then looking at our 5-year capital program, about $471 million program over the next 5 years. Again, on the sources side, federal funds and public transportation funds, a big part of that program. And then on the uses side, regional fleet is a primary use of funds for our capital program, as well as rail program disbursements that will trail off as we move out of the Prop 400 into Prop 479. And then this is just a recap of the budget process we've been going through, started back a couple months ago. Again, want to thank your member city staff for all the input and suggestions they've provided in the discussions we've had. This is our schedule. We're in March going through this cycle and then looking towards May ultimately for adoption of the budget. And with that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Any additional questions, comments? Watching the board up here because I missed the hands. Not seeing any. I do have a comment and a suggestion. As far as the comment, we meaning Goodyear, has a significant concern that there's still no new money for marketing bus services in the West and East Valley. And then as a suggestion, you mentioned base budget reductions of 8.3 million, and you gave us kind of a high level. It was efficiencies, things like that. Just knowing a particular board member, you might want to break that down for the board as to specifically what efficiencies were found and identify those and all of the reductions for the 8.3 into the base.
Certainly, we can do that.
All right.
Thank you for that comment.
Thank you. And with that was for information only, so thank you. No action is needed or required. Item number 5 is report on current events, future agenda items. Do we have any? I am not seeing any. So the next meeting is Wednesday, May 1st at 2024 at 11 a.m. So thank you very much. And it's all yours, Mario.
Okay, thank you. We'll call the Rail Management Committee meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the minutes from the March 6, 2024 RMC meeting presented for approval. Can I get a motion in a second? Got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Motion is approved. Item 2 is the Valley Metro Rail preliminary operating capital budget, 5-year forecast and capital program. Let's turn it back to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to once again invite Ken. We sent you to your seat too soon, Mr. Kessler, to provide an overview. Okay. I want to note as we're moving through budget, I find it helpful to refer back to the initiatives, which I think are in the front of the packet for more detailed summaries. And we're happy to provide those as we discussed this morning.
They're in the, would you say in the back?
So the packet is laid out so that all of the initiatives are in one section under the TMC agenda. And those will be the initiatives that you referenced during this presentation. For future distribution, we'll put them in both sections.
Yes, and my apologies. I should have pointed that out, that was in the packet. Okay, so moving on to the Valley Metro Rail FY25 preliminary budget. In this budget from the last time this body viewed the sort of high level overview of the budget, we have reduced it by about $1.2 million on the operating side. So I just wanted to point that out. To get started with our uses of the funds in the operating budget, a total of $97.4 million. Primary drivers of some of the increases you see there are a full year of the Northwest Extension operations in FY25, contract rate increases, again, those year-over-year increases, and some insurance and utility rate increases, along with some, and we'll get to the security for Mr. Brady, that there's some security enhancements that were implemented this year. Also will carry forward into next year, and we'll see the full year implementation impact of that. Going on to the sources of our operating budget, primarily funded by member city contributions, as well as the fares generated. Again, same formula on how we build out the budget that we discussed on the RPTA side, so I won't spend any time here. Again, sort of the numbers, how they play out in the formulation of the budget, $3.5 million reduction in the base budget, with an overall change in the budget of $8.4 million from FY24 to 25. And then the proportional breakout of the change in the budget of obligations versus Valley Metro recommended initiatives, about 2/3 to 1/3 there. And again, visual of our strategic plan and sort of how that's built. And again, emphasizing that as well on the VMR side, this budget is very much based on supporting that strategic plan and implementing all of those initiatives and meeting those goals and priorities. So starting with the recommended initiatives for the VMR budget, under the first strategic plan goal of deliver excellent customer experience, a couple items here, potential Arizona Diamondbacks ticket partnership marketing campaign. We're currently working with the D-backs to try to get a ticketing partnership in place. And this is proposed as a marketing campaign to support that if that's approved by the Diamondbacks. And then on the enhanced passenger wayfinding and communication, similar item we had on the RPTA side. This one here on the rail side is really to do an audit of the rail signage, assess signage condition and the state of the current signage, as well as provide a education campaign as we transition from a one-line system to a two-line system when the South Central extension opens. Next strategic plan goal, deliver on stakeholder collaboration. We have an item here. Again, this is the same item that we had over on the RPTA side, and this is just the Valley Metro Rail portion of that for the data portal publication, as well as the SMS text outreach tool for individuals who are not engaged with our current communication channels. For the financial sustainability strategic plan goal, we have one item here for VMR, is to conduct a construction contract performance audit. This is recommended by our chief auditor. Basically, these projects are seen as really high risk due to the complexity and scope and cost of these projects. And the point of this audit would be really to hire an outside auditor with specific experience in this area to look at our contracting practices and help us identify areas for improvement in our contracting practices going forward, and how we might do a better job with that and potentially save costs in future contracts. Again, the invest in our talent. This is just the VMR side of the same item we talked about with the RPTA budget. Again, a 2.5% cost of living, and budgeted at 3.5% for merit for just an overall average across the agency. Leverage data and technology strategic plan goal. These initiatives were the same as what we saw over on the RPTA side. So this is just the Valley Metro Rail portion of this, to improve our enterprise asset management system utility, as well as replacing the end of life IT equipment. Okay, now looking at operational excellence, strategic plan goal, a number of items here. We have some operational technology, cybersecurity audit recommendation to add a SCADA specialist. We currently are understaffed in that area, and per the audit, recommending adding an additional position there. Blue Stake base map updates, we need to do this. It's something that hasn't been done in quite a while, and we want to make sure we update this to help us mitigate any potential risk of utility strikes if any projects happen out there in the that may impact with our utilities. And the enhanced facility cleaning and oversight, this is a couple of items here. This is bringing in-house pressure washing staff that are currently on contract. Over the course of 3.5 years, we would break even with the operational and capital costs. And from there, we would save about $80,000 a year, as well as having better control over those services with in-house staff, as opposed to doing it through a contractor. And then it also would include adding a cleaning service coordinator position to improve facilities cleaning oversight for remaining of cleaning services provided by a third-party contractor. This would provide better oversight for that contract to make sure that they're doing what they're being paid to do, basically. And then the South Central Extension staffing for revenue service, so you don't see any cost there for FY25 with the current projected timeline of South Central opening. We need to onboard staff during next fiscal year. That'll be charged to the capital project until revenue service starts in FY26. And if this project is moved forward, which I know there's a lot of desire to do that, we'll come back with a mid-year budget adjustment to make sure we bring that staff cost into operating budget in FY25. And strategic plan goal of prioritizing security on transit. A couple of rail safety specialists being added here. Again, the cybersecurity risk reduction item, the same item that was on the RPTA agenda. But I did want to add that there is in the base budget, there is some of the, or I'm sorry, in the ongoing obligations we'll get to, we'll see some more of the security costs. So before we go on to the obligations, any questions on the Valley Metro recommended budget initiatives?
Mr. Brady.
Can you just go back to enhanced cleaning and oversight? So today, that is all contracted out?
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, all of our contract cleaning services on Valley Metro Rail are contracted to DMS cleaning. And the piece that we're taking out of that specifically is the pressure washing of the stations, which must be performed on a regular basis. Taking that in-house recognizes that it is a regular cadence. It's something that never goes away, of course, and will allow us to perform it with more regularity. And then it's just an additional shift of supervision. We have limited supervision relative to the number of frontline contracted employees who are out there performing work, particularly on the third shift, which is when we're doing a lot of the cleaning services, because that's when we're not in revenue service.
So do we believe we can do this cheaper, more consistently? Because it just seems typically you contract out to get it done less expensive, but what's driving this?
It'll take us just over 3 years for it to become cheaper. In the long run, it will become cheaper, and then we can also be more consistent with the pressure washing if we move that in-house.
Okay. Then you said something there's more to come on rail safety. I guess that's what I'm interested in. So I didn't hear that last comment.
Yeah, as we get into the obligations initiatives.
Okay.
And if you can, on the next slide, explain what these rail safety specialists will be doing.
I'd be happy to take that one. So our rail safety specialists, we have historically just had one rail safety specialist. These are the individuals who are working not only to be responsive to incidents and accidents that occur on the system, but they're working with our contractor to supervise all aspects of our rail safety program, which includes everything from operator training to drug and alcohol to accident mitigation. As our system has expanded over time, we have not invested in additional staff. We still have the same headcount today that we had as a much smaller system that we run in a mixed guideway right of way creates a number of different safety hazards, of course, along our alignment than other systems like ours have. So this is an area where we are significantly understaffed for current size of the system. And then we're adding 5.5 miles, of course, with South Central. So this brings us a little bit closer to what we would consider an industry best practice level of safety.
Very good, thank you.
I think historically we've put a lot of our safety resources and put the onus on the contractor, and they do have certain obligations and duties they are to perform, and they do. But we must truly own the rail safety program.
Mario, one more comment.
Yes.
And you've heard this, but I just think if we're going to have these campaigns for special events, this is our opportunity to really sell, light rail to the general public that probably otherwise wouldn't do it, but they're motivated because they're not going to have to go park in downtown Phoenix and they could never make the ride. But my experience is it's a great ride down, but on the way back, when people are pushed off of trains and then they're stuffed back into consolidated to a train, just to reduce the number of trains, it doesn't lend itself to like, oh, I want to do that again. So let's think that through. I don't know what that means operationally, but I just think it's the opportunity for light rail to really say, hey, this is a great option. So maybe it's not always a Diamondbacks game. Maybe it's when you want to go down for another event in downtown Phoenix. So just give that some consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. We hope that we will deliver excellent experiences this coming weekend. For Final Four, we have a solid operating plan. It includes items like 3-car train consists. Normally we run 2 cars, so we will be running 3-car trains throughout much of the busy part of the weekend. And then it's an all hands on deck effort for our Allied Universal Security Contract team members, our customer experience coordinators, though they are tiny but mighty, there are just 12 of them today, and then volunteers from all across the organization. We will be out there in full force, but you're right, it's that post-event when the mood changes and behavior changes.
Yes, Rosa.
I just wanted to share, thanks Ken for the presentation. The rail safety specialist, I'm really glad to see that. I think it's been a game changer for Tempe to have community responders, the proactive presence anywhere, whether it's in your parks or in your downtown. It does help deter some of the issues that we see collectively as a region. So I'm glad to see that. And then the SCADA also, I think it helps to have that intelligence center. So thank you.
Certainly.
Back to you, Ken.
Okay, so moving on to the obligations items in the FY25 budget. Deliver excellent customer service, strategic plan goal. Here we have this is the part of the DMS contract that will remain outsourced. So this is the year-over-year increase for those services. Under the strategic plan goal of leverage data and technology, again, the IT contract rate increases year over year. Same item we had on the RPT budget, just the Valley Metro Rail portion of that item. Under operational excellence, number of items here. The annualization of the Northwest Phase 2 operations into FY25, increased insurance premiums, as I mentioned, and the year-over-year rate increases for the rail service contract. And also looking at some maintenance items where we have some inflation in some of the costs of equipment, parts, and supplies used in our maintenance program. And then, as I mentioned before as well, the utility rate increases for light rail, that inflation impacting our FY25 budget as well. So here we go to the security item for VMR. So the first item there is just the general contract rate increase for the security contract. And then we have the second item, the security redeploy. So this was a redeployment Adrian and her team did with the Allied Universal resources during the current year. So this is just that continuing into next year, the additional cost of that, doing it for a full year. And then, of course, the annualization of the full year impact of security for Northwest Phase 2.
Can we pause there? Chris, did you have any questions on this one as we?
No, I think, but what I read here is is the continuation of what we've already committed to. Right? I mean, this is rate increases, and then it's taking, I don't know what redeploy means. I guess I'm assuming this is continuation of what we started mid-year. I don't know when,
Yeah.
something like that, or.
We've been texting here these last few minutes, and we're gonna need to separate those out. We'll do that before the board presentation
Okay.
later this month, because there's OMC yard entrance, which is the addition of fixed post at OMC and that guard shack constructed there.
Oh.
We're gonna pull out security redeployment. So this is something that we already did, a shift that we made earlier this year. We added supervisory staff, we added mobile response units, so we've got we've got posts assigned within given zones, and then we've added a layer of mobile response teams who can be moved throughout the system as needed. And then we've added a layer, or not really a layer, but added additional FTEs to that contract for supervision. We had a very low ratio of supervisors to guards, and this was one of the recommendations from the American Public Transit Association Safety and Security peer review on the allied contract. We had 15 guards to 1 supervisor, I think. So we've changed that number. And so we already made that spend beginning in current fiscal year, and this is continuing that spend through FY25. I also want to note, and I think we're going to need to sharpen our pencils and go back to this budget number. We're in the process now of actually working through our rail cities to produce a new RFP for security services. That's the contract currently held by Allied Universal Security. We anticipate the period of performance of that new contract would be around April of 2025 beginning. So it's going to hit the FY25 budget year. So I think we might need to go back and modify our obligation or our continuing commitment on this item to prepare for a possible increase to this item.
Yeah, and just my only comment is, so when you say all that, I'm like going, I'm starting to feel better about it. And I appreciate the efficiency of, budget presentations and trying to get to the point, because it's a big budget. I just think this is one of those areas where a more expansive narrative of what we're trying to accomplish is worth the additional slide or bullet points, just because I think it's front of mind. So just.
I recognize that. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Brady. We'll make that adjustment in advance of the board meeting on April 18th.
Thank you. So I've got a question as well. So on the, I know one of the issues with the contract is the staffing of the guards, of the security personnel, and just curious, do we know what the current vacancy rate is for them?
Adrian, I want to call upon Adrian Ruiz. I believe the last update I had was 26%, but we might have closed some of that gap in the last week.
So thank you, Chair, members of the committee, for the question. The gap continues, the vacancy rate continues to be a moving target for us right now. A couple of things, as we know, when there's underperformers or we have incidents or violation of policy, we let people go on this contract. We direct Allied that we don't want them in the contract any longer. So as we're bringing people in the door, like the current academy that's in the area of about 20 some people, maintain those folks in the capacity they are to finish the academy, pass all the tests and get out. We're hovering right around the 26th percentile vacancy rate. We were in the 50s, close to about 9 months ago. So we have improved, but we've kind of stayed plateaued in this 25 to 30% vacancy rate. If we continue on the path we are today, keeping everyone in the academy, don't lose any more that are in the field, we could be in the 10s. So we have sought that horizon milestone numerous times, and then we have maybe a performance issue. We have to let 2 or 3 go. So we're kind of doing this magical game of vacancy rate number chasing. So we're right now about 26, 25.
I think it's important to note that in addition to this $2.178 million of additional resources that we're seeking for FY25, that also includes dollars we're not spending today. So the underrun on the Allied Universal contract due to our vacancy rate.
Yeah, thank you. And the rate increase, does that include any adjustments for the personnel in terms of their pay?
No, it does not. It is not. That would be a board action. We're staying within the contracted and budgeted amount of the current contract, which is in its 3rd base year. We're due to go to option year 1 starting July 1. But as Jessica said, we're going to be in the RFP process, and hopefully by next spring, early summer, we would have a new contract of which we would expect to see some increases.
Adrian, can you clarify, is there a wage rate increase included in option year one starting July?
Yes, ma'am, there is a 2.2%, basically a COLA that's already included in their contract scope. So July 1, that would be a 2.2 increase.
2.2%. Okay.
And we're starting at what, 1968? And
1989 an hour, just under $20 an hour.
Sorry.
Yes, please.
I appreciate all that, but the problem is we're dealing, to say, okay, maybe this will be addressed a year from now. It's kind of, or what you said, what was the timing of the new yeah, I missed that. So you said
So
again.
the procurement process does have quite a little bit of months behind it to prepare. We have a scope of work currently. We have revised to about 95% completion. We have some other items and working with Jonathan Thatcher with our procurement division in how we can kind of look at bringing in maybe a forum of security experts and technology, how we can leverage technology and look at the industry field as for improvements. But yes, absolutely, we want to build a robust scope of work and we expect increases, yes.
And that's fine. I think what I really question is the timing, right? I'm just asking, is the timing saying that we really won't have that next contract on until spring of next year?
That's correct.
We
However,
potentially go 12 months with 26+% vacancy. All I'm suggesting is it's a challenge today, right? You have that challenge today because of your total, give me real numbers. What's 25% of what? What is that as far as number of bodies? What is that?
Be about 36 people were short.
Yeah, that's a big number, right? And so all I'm saying is maybe, is there a possibility of going to the current contractor? You're not extending their contract, it's saying, hey, tell us what taking 2.2 to something else, right? To get that closer to $20 plus, would that help? I mean, it's performance, I hear that, but sometimes it's just your rate attracts a certain,
Yes, it does.
person. So maybe it would be interesting to go and say, what if that 2.2, your own employees, you're doing a COLA greater than that with an average with merits, it's going to be higher than that. So these aren't any different, they're living in the same neighborhoods and buying the gas and the groceries, the same place the employees are. I'm just saying maybe for that 1 year to try to address this vacancy, it may be worth going and asking that question.
if there's an appetite from this committee, it seems as though there is, we can have that conversation.
If it puts more bodies out in the field, yes.
I agree 100%. I think, when you're talking about the challenges that we've seen in our communities with safety and security along the light rail corridor, that 26%, 37 bodies, that's significant. That would make a noticeable difference, I think, if those people were there.
Yeah.
And the pay can affect the quality of the folks you're getting. I understand what you're saying, that you lose them as fast as you get them sometimes because you're addressing those performance issues. But if you can get a little bit higher quality applicant coming in, that can help with the retention. So yeah, I would definitely be in favor of having that conversation.
We'll begin that conversation with Allied. We're in a performance improvement process with Allied and have been since late in the calendar year 2023. We have an update that we'd be bringing back to the board on April 18th as an information item. I would encourage members of this committee, to the extent you're available, to participate in that conversation. It will be an agendized item so that we can have an open discussion about the current state of security on the rail system. But we'll add this and perhaps even be able to report back with something on this particular wage rate item on April 18th.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, so moving on, here again, this table summarizing all of the obligations totaling about $7.9 million. And then moving on to the capital program, the sources of funds for capital primarily supported by federal funds, member city contributions, and public transportation funds. Oops, I have that. Wait, I'm sorry, I had that backwards. I missed the uses. And again, the primary capital program here, the major projects going on for next fiscal year, South Central and capital extension being the biggest. The sources, and then moving on to the 5-year forecast for the Valley Metro Rail operating and capital programs. We have about a $595 million operating program, primarily supported by member city contributions and fares. And then on our capital program, about a $715 million program over the next 5 years, it's primarily supported by federal funds and public transportation funds. As we move out into the future, again, the PTF winding down. And then on the use side, the capital extension, South Central, the two biggest projects we have going forward into the 5-year forecast period. And that brings us to the timeline of the budget development process. And I'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Okay, thank you so much, Ken. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right. That takes us to item 3, which is report on current events and suggested future items. Anything from the committee? Seeing none, we'll adjourn, noting that our next meeting is May 1st at 11 a.m. Thanks, everybody.